You know what makes gamers instantly suspicious? It is when a developer starts roasting the very genre he is trying to sell back to us. That, right there, is always a fun little red flag. It is not a deal breaker, but it is that immediate moment where you lean back and go, oh, this guy is either about to cook, or he is about to slam face first into his own doo-doo. Because that is exactly what happened here. This guy comes out to sell Zero Company, and he basically says tactics fans got too comfortable with ugly visuals, stiff animation, weak story, clunky presentation, and all the usual genre excuses. Which, honestly, is an incredible way to enter the room. He did not knock, and he did not smile. He just walked in and said, you people have been living like this, and honestly, it is funny. It is very funny. It is also a little true. The first part still kills me though. The fake revelation, the grand discovery, story. In a single-player Star Wars game, no way. That is huge if true. Next, he is going to tell us water is wet, betrayal happens in Star Wars, and players enjoy characters who sound like human beings. Brother, you are making a Star Wars game. Nobody was sitting here praying for an emotionless spreadsheet with laser rifles. You did not invent narrative. You just noticed that one of the biggest story brands on earth might actually need some story. Brave stuff. But once you stop laughing, there is a real point under all the chest thumping. Tactics fans really have put up with some absolute nonsense over the years. This genre has been running on a weird sense of moral superiority for way too long. Bad UI. That is just hardcore. Terrible onboarding. That is a skill filter. Stiff cutscenes. Well, that is just the budget. Weak writing. That is not the point. Lifeless presentation. You clearly just do not appreciate depth. No, sometimes a game is not ugly because it is serious. Sometimes it is ugly because it looks like hell, and the fanbase got emotionally attached to the smell. That is the actual roast here. He is looking at old school tactics players and saying, you have been eating dry crackers in silence for years, and calling it a gourmet lifestyle. It is mean, it is accurate, and it is deserved in some cases. Some strategy fans really do treat basic polish like a threat to the genre. Show them a strong art style, better animations, cleaner dialogue, or a camera with a pulse, and suddenly they act like you are trying to gentrify suffering. Relax. Good mechanics do not suddenly become fake just because the game has eyebrows. And that is why the pitch sounds good, right up until the part where my gamer instincts kick in and start checking pockets. Deep tactics, with approachable and cinematic presentation. It is a great sentence. Really, it is a gorgeous sentence. That sentence has been focus tested, moisturized, and sent out with a handler. Now, show me the game. Show me the hit percentages. Show me the pathing. Show me the UI when 6 units, 2 elevations, 1 bad flank, and a panic decision all collide in the same miserable corridor. Show me mission pacing after the first few hours, when the trailer sparkle wears off and the systems actually have to pay rent. Because cinematic is one of those industry words that sounds amazing, until you realize half the time it just means they put a dramatic zoom on something mid, and hoped you would confuse motion with substance. And every preview keeps doing this little embarrassed dance where it says, no, 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 this is not just Star Wars XCOM, then spends the next 5 minutes describing Star Wars XCOM with better lighting and a social life. You walk around in third person, you talk to squad mates, and you build bonds. Then, you go into turn-based tactical combat where one stupid choice can ruin your night. That is XCOM in a Star Wars jacket. Which is fine, that is a good jacket. Stop acting like you got caught with contraband. Reddit had the healthiest reaction to this entire thing, which was basically, yeah. And, exactly. Star Wars XCOM is not a problem. That is why people clicked. Then they sprinkle Mass Effect on top, because apparently nobody is allowed to pitch one recognizable thing when they can pitch 3. So now, the elevator version is Mass Effect feelings, XCOM panic, and Star Wars branding leaning against the wall collecting royalties. Again, it is a solid pitch, but it is also dangerous. Because that combo can work, but it can also collapse if one side is carrying the other like a drunk friend after closing time. If the characters hit, players forgive some rough edges. If the tactics hit, players forgive some awkward writing. If both are average, then congratulations, you built an expensive waiting room. The permadeath angle is where it goes from marketing to emotional blackmail, and I mean that with affection. They are talking about loss, sacrifice, consequence, and emotional stakes, all the big, serious words that game trailers whisper right before somebody stares out a window. Fine, great. Then the gamer brain translates it. Oh, so I can get attached to a squad mate, hear their little backstory, enjoy their banter, and maybe even start caring, only to lose them forever because I trusted a 90% shot like a complete idiot. perfect. Nothing says cinematic tragedy like watching your favorite character die, simply because the cover system and the camera briefly stopped speaking to each other. And that part could actually be good. It could be really good if the game commits. If somebody dies and the story changes, if the squad reacts, if the tone shifts, if future scenes feel different, if the bass gets quieter, and if the writing actually remembers what happened, then yes, that hurts in the right way. That is real tension. That is the good pain. But if the game sells permadeath like some noble emotional breakthrough, and then everyone is back to normal by the next cutscene, then it is fake. Then it is just content with a funeral filter. Players know the difference. They have seen too many games ask for credit on a check they never planned to cash. Then we get to the camera flare, which might be my favorite accidental self-own in the whole pitch. Apparently, if you turned off the dramatic camera angles, the gameplay would still be the gameplay, right? Exactly. That is because the dramatic angles are seasoning. They are useful seasoning, maybe even expensive seasoning, but they are still seasoning. Nobody ever fixed bland food by whispering cinematic over it. Presentation matters. Of course it matters. Better animation matters, better framing matters, and better sound matters. The full package matters. But the package is not the product. A slick zoom does not make a slow mission exciting, and a close-up does not make shallow tactics deep. Players are not anti-style, they are anti-being distracted. There is a difference. One feels like care, the other feels like jingling keys over unfinished systems. My favorite part of this whole rollout is the confidence. This man is taking shots at older tactics games for clunky controls and stale presentation, before his own game has even survived ordinary players touching it. That is bold. It is hilarious, but it is bold. Right now, the controls are still a promise. The final feel is still a promise. The smooth onboarding is still a promise. The whole trust us, this is approachable without losing depth thing is still a promise. So, when a dev starts talking like he is here to save a genre from its own bad habits, before the public has even stress-tested the product, I laugh a little. Earn the sermon after launch. Until then, you are still auditioning. He is trying to feed two crowds that absolutely do not want the same meal every time. Hardcore tactics players want crunch. They want clarity, they want readable systems, sharp decision-making, and enough mechanical depth to ruin a weekend and make them love it. Wider Star Wars players want drama, character moments, smoother onboarding, stronger presentation, and a game that does not feel like filling out military tax forms with a blaster rifle. Those groups overlap, sure, but not perfectly. Try to please both, and you might make something special. Try too hard, and you end up serving salad with a lightsaber in it. It is a cool centerpiece, but it is still just a salad. That is why his insult lands, by the way. He is not attacking nothing. Tactics games have absolutely hidden behind depth for years. Fans have absolutely made excuses they would laugh at in any other genre. Players should not have to choose between good systems and basic human presentation in 2026. That trade is embarrassing now. Nobody hears maybe the dialogue should not sound embalmed, and thinks that means strategy is dead. Nobody says this UI should not feel like a hostile work environment, because they secretly want less depth. Gamers are not asking for the genre to get dumber. They are asking for it to stop acting proud of being uncomfortable. And gamers have every right to be skeptical when a developer starts talking like he is the one who finally gets it. We have heard that voice before. We have heard accessible turn into shallow. We have heard cinematic turn into repetitive cut-ins and dead air. We have heard rich characters mean 3 decent conversations, 1 loyalty mission, and a codex entry doing all the heavy lifting. That skepticism is not negativity, that is memory. Players learned it the expensive way. They paid for enough confidence to recognize the smell. That is why trust matters more than hype now. Not quotes, not previews, but trust. Players want to believe, they just do not want to be farmed. And this dev created a very funny situation for himself the second he roasted tactics fans for getting too used to ugly, stiff, story-light games. Because now he does not get any excuses. No, he does not get to hide behind genre tradition. He does not get to hide behind budget talk. He does not get to hide behind, well, real fans understand. No, you said the genre got lazy. Fine. Then your game has to be better. Not more articulate, just better. Not in interviews, but in my hands, on a random Tuesday, after 5 hours when I am tired. That is when games tell the truth. That is the part marketers always hate, because now, every flaw becomes evidence. The second you position yourself as the guy who is finally dragging tactics games into the modern age, players stop grading you on effort. Now they grade you on the speech you gave, That is why this rollout is so entertaining. He did not just sell a game, he challenged an audience's survival habits. He looked at a genre built on coping mechanisms and told it to grow up. It was a great move, a terrible move, and a spectacular move. And honestly, good. Too many tactics games really do act like being difficult to love is part of the charm. It is not charm, it is bad manners with a cover system. If Zero Company actually lands, if it really brings strong tactics, real consequence, better character writing, cleaner presentation, and a smoother path into the genre without sanding the teeth off it, then that is great for gamers. That raises the floor. That pressures everybody else. That makes every lazy clone look worse overnight. Good, the genre needs that kind of threat hanging over it. But if it misses, if the systems are softer than advertised, if the story is thinner than promised, and if the cinematic layer is just expensive makeup on familiar problems, then this entire speech turns into one giant cell phone. That is the risk when you roast your own genre before launch. You are not just building hype. You are volunteering for a harder standard. And players will hold you to it, because gamers can forgive ambition failing, but what they cannot stand is being condescended to on the way to the checkout page. So, here is the blunt version. Either this guy is about to drag tactics games into a better era, by proving you can have crunch, consequence, polish, and actual character work in the same box, or he is delivering the most polished trust me bro speech the genre has heard in years. Both are possible. That is why people care. Not because story in Star Wars is some revelation, and not because slapping a big franchise on turn-based combat automatically means evolution. People care because he said the quiet part out loud. He looked at a genre full of excuses and called them excuses. Now he has to live under the standard he used as a weapon. And that is the whole joke. He looked at tactics fans and said they got too comfortable with ugly, stiff, story-light games. It was a fair shot and maybe long overdue. But now he has to prove he was not just describing his own game 6 months too early. If Zero Company lands, he looks like the guy who saw the rot and fixed it. If it stumbles, then he did not roast the genre. He just grabbed a microphone, walked on stage, and pre-ordered his own humiliation.